All right, hello everyone. Welcome back. It's that time of the week. It's time for some more One Hub racing. Today it's the P3 tier, and we arrive at COTA for the penultimate round of season 21. As always, I am joined by ERT Toma, and heading into this round, it's very, very close to the championship. Do you think we could see a title decider today?
I don't. I think. No, I'm not entirely sure because the top two drivers, which are Gazman and Kong Hofner, they have the same exact points. So I don't think it's mathematically possible for someone to win the title tonight. It's just tonight's going to be deciding on who gets eliminated from the title fight going into next week's race.
Yeah, and like you said, with the championship, there's only this round and one more round to go. And with it being tied at the top between Gazaman and Kong Hofner, 68 points apiece, a race win here could be crucial for either of them. And like you said, it's not mathematically possible, but let's say Kong Hofner manages to win the race and Gazaman DNFs. Well, it would be very hard for Gazaman to bring it back next week. But yeah, you can see it's going to be a very exciting race. We also have Aero Specialist, who's somewhat in the mix. He's got 60 points to his name, so he's 8 points off of this championship battle. So he's going to have to get a good result here today, and hopefully he can be battling it out in the final round of the season 21. But we are getting ready in this qualifying session. You can see a lot of drivers on their outlaps getting ready to set their first lap times of the session. And you can see the first man out of the pit lane is going to be IRL Neon, but you can see he's actually struggling with the setup as he has a spin there through the triple right-hander. So that's going to get his tires quite warm, maybe too warm. But let's see if he can put it all together on this lap time now, as he's now entering the final two turns. And well, let's see what kind of time can he get straight out of the gates. What kind of banker can he get on the board? You can see starting this lap time now, as it's a very long DRS straight all the way to turn 1, and then you rise up the hill. It's a blind apex coming into this turn 1, but he manages to hit it and gets a decent exit out of there. Doesn't really want to use the curb on the outside because there's now brand new sausage curbs on the outside of that exit curb. Now through the S is a very, very tricky section, but managing to do it quite nicely there, and setting himself up nicely for these next couple of turns. You really need to make sure that going through these turns you're able to set yourself up nicely for the next, because they keep coming at you and coming at you very quickly. We now come into this hairpin of turn 11. That brings us onto yet another very long DRS straight as we're coming towards the third sector now. And yeah, you can see there's going to be a lot of overtaking, especially on the straight, just how long it is. It's been on here for a good 10 seconds now. So I think there'll definitely be a dive bomb or two into this turn 12 now. And you can see slightly missing the apex there, but still hooking it up decently as we are now into the final sector. It starts off very, very slow with these turns. You can see going down to second, back up to third and fourth for exit to get that better traction. But then it picks up a little as we get into the very high-speed triple right-hander. But you can see IRL Neon really struggling with the setup because he has a spin there. And Aero Specialist has actually retired from the session. So the man who's third place in the championship battle and needs to get a good result today to stay in that battle has DNF from the session. Do you think that's really going to affect his chances?
I think so. I have just had a look just to double check on the engine penalty. The Aero Specialist is taking an engine for this race, so that is why he has retired. He'll be starting from the back. He's going to have to make up he's going to have a mega drive to get back up and try and stay within that title fight. Maybe try and pip Gazman and Kong Hofner in the last race.
Oh yes, of course. I actually forgot about the engine penalties. Another man with an engine penalty is Evil Dragon 99. So he's going to be starting at the back of the grid along with Gabri, although I don't think Gabri was actually able to make it today. So it's just going to be Evil Dragon and Aero Specialist both with grid penalties. But we only have 13 drivers today for this lobby, so it's not been the best attendance, sadly. But that now means that if so long as you finish the race, you're pretty much guaranteed points, as there's only one position that isn't going to give you a point, and that is P13. So as long as you can keep it somewhat consistent and manage to finish P12, you will be getting points today. But you can see we have the two championship leaders, ERS Konghofner and Gazaman, both on lap times, as they are now both entering the final sector of their laps. Let's see how fast they can go through here and what kind of time they can set. You can see for Konghofner, it's not very good through there, as he went very wide into that last left-hander. But he's now got two final turns to make up the last bit of time in this first lap. But you can see once again missing that apex, is struggling to get the car turned in around here. But out of this final turn, opts not to use that outside curb. You can see it's a 34.8, which puts him P3, whereas Gazaman, where's this lap time going to put him? He's only got one more turn to go. You can see he's actually abandoning his first lap time of the session, actually misses the pit lane there, and almost hits into the pit lane wall, so thankfully was able to avoid that. But he has abandoned his first banker time of the session. So only 5 people have set a lap time. We have Lawrence on provisional pole position with a 1 minute 34.5, and then we have ERT Jordan with a 35.4. As you can see, 9/10 between the top 5. But at this CODA circuit, do you maybe expect anyone to do better now that there's a bit of championship tension on the line? Or maybe for a couple of drivers, it's not there as much as it was in earlier rounds?
I think definitely, especially for the people in the top 5 of the championship, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to stay within the title fight and even try and put themselves in the best position going into next week to try and win the whole season. So pressure is definitely going to play a massive part in tonight, and we've seen a lot of drivers. I've seen a couple of drivers like spin on the triple right-hander. We saw Neon, and also I did watch Gazaman. He did spin in that section. So there could be a lot of that tonight. It could be a lot of pressure getting to drivers and forcing them to make those slight mistakes that cost them quite dearly.
It definitely could, and that's just the kind of pressure that gets to these drivers when the end of the season is near. But then there might be a couple of drivers. One that comes to mind is Racing Bomber. He's got no championship tension. He's not in the battle, and he's got 2 rounds to go, so he might just be going absolutely full send to maybe try and get a race win or 2 before the end of the season. And in this P3 tier, we've had a different race winner every single week, and if that trend continues, we might see someone like Evil Dragon winning their first race. Maybe Lawrence D, as he's currently got provisional pole position by 0.2 of a second. So it's good banker time from the Ferrari driver, but there's plenty of improvements to be made for the rest of the grid, and also a couple of lap times just to be set altogether, because right now we have 5 drivers who have not set a lap time, excluding Evil Dragon, as you can see there, retiring from the session because of his engine penalties. We still have 5 drivers yet to set a lap time, but as you can see, we've been riding on board with Alls for pretty much this entire lap, and let's see what kind of time he can put on the board. His team, Red Bull, himself and Gazaman, are currently leading the Constructors' Championship, so they'll definitely be hoping for a good result today. And you can see he gets a 35.3. That puts him 0.8 behind Lawrence D. We now see Racing Bomber, the man on the provisional front row, currently on a lap time. Also, Lawrence D about to start his second lap time of the session too. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of improvements these drivers can make. But with Aero Specialist and Evil Dragon both starting at the back of the grid, these are drivers. Obviously, Aero Specialist has won a race, and Evil Dragon has gotten a few podiums here and there. Do you think it's going to be interesting to watch them move themselves up the grid?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's always nice to see drivers who have given themselves an engine penalty or have started close to the back, see them fight to make up those places, either realising that they need to work up their way up the grid to try and contend for a podium or just a high-scoring finish. even if, like, in the case if they've had a bad qualifying or they've had the engine penalty. Yes, I am hoping that Aero Specialist and Evil Dragon can just be on a mission like Kong Hoffner was last week. Just be on a mission to work their way up the grid as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I think these engine penalties, they definitely create a good race dynamic like we saw last time, as you mentioned there. ERS Kong Hoffner went from pretty much the back of the grid after a lot of drivers took engine penalties and worked his way all the way up into P2. And obviously last season, he was, not last season, I should say, last week, he was very, very close to the race win, but just got beaten by Gazaman. They were obviously all on soft tyres towards the end, and yeah, Gazaman just had the pace and he won that race, and it's lucky that he did, because they're now even on points, even playing field between Kong Hoffner and Gazaman, but Gazaman yet to set a lap time. We just saw Racing Bombers 34.4 there, puts him once again onto provisional pole position, but Lawrence D is also on a lap time, and he'll be looking to take that provisional pole position back. We can see there on the exit of the triple right-hander and into the next left, had a bit of a moment there, just turned in too early, spun the car, and he is now going to have to make his way back to the pit lane. But let's ride on board now with Kong Hoffner for his second lap time of the session. He's definitely going to want a good qualifying session here, as you can see, hitting that blind apex of turn 1, and he's definitely going to want a good qualifying session, because his championship rival has just put it on provisional pole position by a 1/10 of a second. So you can see coming through the S's now, ERS Kong Hoffner using the full width of the track into there. You can see it's a bit wide on the exit of the S's, so that is going to lose him quite a bit of time because of that. So he's going to have to make it up in these final 2 sectors, so definitely not a good start to his lap time. You can see into turn 11 now, hitting that apex quite nicely, quite a late apex there, and obviously that's because you can get a very good exit going onto this long DRS straight, the longest straight at the circuit, probably one of the longest on the F1 calendar. As we now make our way into the 3rd sector, taking turn 12 here, you can see hitting that apex once again and using a little bit of the exit curve, but you don't really need to drift that wide on the exit of turn 12. But coming into here, you can see a very wide entry and gets it right this time. He missed the apex on his last lap, but he manages to get that hooked up quite nicely this time. Triple ride of 16, 17 and 18. We've seen a couple of drivers struggle at that section. You can see Kong Hoffner just turns in too early there and invalidates his lap time. But I've just gotten word from Aero Specialist, since obviously he's not in the qualifying session, he's been watching the stream, and he's just told us that there is going to be rain forecasted for the start of the race. So yeah, that could definitely pose a threat for a couple of the drivers. What did you have to say?
I was in the Discord chat with a lot of the drivers in just before the race, and a lot of them have always been hoping all season that we haven't got any, that rain does not happen. They've got their wish for the majority of the season, but it looks like but we are getting rain today. And to me, rain can only make a race more exciting. It's a great equalizer, as a lot of people say for F1. So I'm hoping for a pretty exciting race.
Yeah, and like I said, rain definitely makes it a very exciting race, interesting dynamic, and with the chances of mistakes being so much so much higher, I should say, these drivers are going to have to be at their top of the game if they want to get a good result out of this race. So I think we're going to see consistency beat pace, at least for the wet period. But this qualifying session has absolutely flown by, as we now have 3.5 minutes to go. So you can see most drivers are in the pit lane and preparing to set their final lap times. You can see Racing Bomber, though he has gone out quite early, wanted to get out ahead of the traffic, and I think he's timed it pretty well, as once he gets to the pit straight, there won't be any traffic getting in the way of his lap time. So we'll be able to ride on board with Racing Bomber before we see the final lap times come on to the timing boards. But ERT Toma, would you like to take us through this lap with the Alpine driver currently on provisional pole? Or provisional front row, I should say.
So as you come around the last corner to start your lap, you open up the DRS, try and keep the most speed as possible, go up the hill into turn 1, a wide entry to hit that apex. Then as you come back down this hill, go around this turn, you want to keep close to the curb. And then as you come into the S's, very tricky section, and very easy to validate your lap, which Racing Bomber has done very well not to. To head round into this left hand, up another hill, into quite a blind couple of turns. It's very easy to unsettle your car hitting those curbs. And you come back down another hill to come into a hairpin, to go into the very long back straight of this track, where, as I said earlier, we will be expecting a lot of overtakes and a lot of action to come down into this hairpin. So just keep your car on straight as possible, try and take as much as the curve on the outside to come right back in, hit that apex. I think we just missed it. To head down into this little tricky section with a couple of turns, very quick succession of turns, followed by this very tricky hard braking zone, almost like Bahrain, turn 9 and 10 there. And then into the triple right-hander, which we've seen a lot of drivers spin at in this qualifying session, which will only be made harder by the rain within the race. And come through into the penultimate corner, and see Racing Bomber has run wide and invalidated his lap, unfortunately. He might be able to go for another run if he is willing. Yeah, and I think that'll be, unfortunately, he invalidated his lap very late on, which is always gutting for a driver. So that should be his qualifying session done for today.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to get another lap time, and as you can see, they're retiring from the session, but he actually retires on track, almost getting in the way of Gazaman, who has just started his final lap time of the session, currently on a 34.3. Let's see if he can beat that in this dying part of the session. You can see a good exit through the S's there, and hitting his apexes quite nicely so far, but opting not to take that curb on the right hand side. Hit a very late apex to get a good exit, maybe too good, as he spins the rears there, manages to keep it under control though, as he now comes into turn 11, and you can see a nice late apex into there, not really using the exit curb as use too much of it and you can unsettle the floor of the car, so opting not to use as much, but taking a later apex instead to get that exit speed that he needs to get to his top speed of this Red Bull Formula 1 car. But we now come into turn 12 and the technical section of Sector 3, 2 tenths up coming out of the middle sector, so this is looking like a decent time so far. But into turn 15 now, very tricky to get this right, but he takes that so nicely, wide on entry and then sharp on exit to get yourself a good run coming into this triple right-hander. A very wide line through here, maybe too wide, as he goes off track, manages to keep the lap time valid, but because of that he misses the apex there of the penultimate turn into this final turn, just about tapping the curb there, and across the line it is going to be an improvement to a 34.3, and he outpaces his rival ERS Kong Hoffner, so he's got the measure on his championship rival, but is anyone going to be able to compete with that time? Lawrence D is only a little bit up on his time, and there was some teamwork I should say, between the two Ferraris there. Speed Quinn giving Lawrence a massive slipstream down the back straight, and he's now gained a tenth and a half through the middle sector alone, so he's now 2 tenths up on his time. And if he can find a tenth more in this final sector, he could even possibly be looking at pole position. So great teamwork there between the two Ferraris into the final 2 turns, just about hitting that apex. But you can see wheel spin on the exit, unsettling the car, and then missing the apex of this final turn. Will it be an improvement? Yes, it will though, and he goes pole position with a 34.300, and Lawrence D has made a surprise appearance in the top grid slot of today's American Grand Prix. So wow, did we really expect a Ferrari on pole position today?
Usually I would say no, but Lawrence is just putting an absolute stonking lap there. With Speed Quinn's help of the tow, which definitely helped him, and it probably pushed him over Gazman's time. That was really nicely done from the two of them, which we haven't seen that a lot this season. So big respect to the teamwork there. and that is a very good pole lap from Lawrence.
Yeah, great lap from him. He's going to be very, very happy with that one. But only time will tell if you can convert this great qualifying session into an even better race. 1/10 separates the top three. We have the two championship rivals starting second and third, and Lawrence D taking pole position by 8/1000ths of a second. Racing Bomber takes P4, wasn't able to get in his final lap, so who knows, maybe he could have even gotten a faster lap time and gotten pole position, but after that final invalidation, was not able to get another time on the board. ERT Jordan, though, for Mercedes, is going to take P5 with the Ferrari teammate of Speedquin, who gave that massive slipstream, finishing in P6. So good team effort there for Ferrari. MFC Trunders, the teammate of Kong Hofner, in P7, with Rich 500 starting P8. And, well, in this race, if there's going to be wet conditions, would you know how that affects the two-stop strategy rule? Does it even apply now that these intermediate conditions are coming out?
It does still apply. So we're still going to have to see a mandatory two-stop from every single driver, which makes this race even more interesting, because in dry conditions, you can very easily make a two-stop, but in the wet conditions, it's very hard, because now you've kind of got to create a pit stop out of nowhere, which gives the driver, it shows off how the strategy of driving and how well they are able to produce a strategy. So this could be very exciting in terms of what everyone decides to do, when to pit, how long do they go on their tyres.
Yeah, it definitely will be, and you only have so many sets of intermediates and full wet conditions, and well, looking at the track right now, it could even possibly be time for those full wet tyres. But we'll have to see as our drivers now line up on the grid. It is intermediate conditions. We have 5 red lights. They're gone. We're away. What can I start it for our pole man of Lawrence D? Does not look like the best one up against Gazaman. And Gazaman has taken the lead before turn 1 as Lawrence D does not have a good start off the line. Going down the inside of ERS Kong Hofner there. A little bit of wheel spin on the exit. That's a couple of drivers going wide. One of the Haskars of a Salty Bear dropping to last place after a mistake. That's MFC Trunders who's made contact there with Racing Bomber or ERT Jordan. We now see the McLaren and the Ferrari going side by side through the S's. Speed Quinn has now been overtaken by IRL Neon as well. You can see a lot of moves have been happening. The AlphaTauri of Evil Dragon and Speed Quinn now going side by side. The two Ferraris not having a good race start here, and they've both fallen down quite a few positions. Lawrence D obviously is a big talking point. He's fallen down from pole position to P3. We now see Evil Dragon in the background trying to look to the inside of IRL Neon. Cannot commit to that move coming into turn 11. We now have ERT Jordan, who's very close to the back of Racing Bomber. We ride on board. You can see using plenty of his ERS to try and find a way past on the run down into turn 12, but Racing Bomber using plenty of his ERS too. He defends it quite nicely coming into turn 12 and maintains P4 for now. You can see Lawrence D was not prepared for these wet conditions. He's really struggling. He's already lost that 1 second gap to the top two, although not that it matters too much as DRS is obviously not enabled in these wet conditions. We see Evil Dragon going around the outside of turn 15. Not a place where you're going to see a lot of moves, but he's trying to make it stick and into this triple right-hander. He has the inside line and he makes the move on Rich 500, who has a spin going through the triple right. Racing Bomber has DNF from the session after a spin through the triple right. You can see that a Salty Bear broke too late there, hitting to the back of Speed Quinn, and that is now the full course safety car that has been released. Gazaman did not have enough time to react, neither did Kong Hofner. The safety car just came out too late for them to come into the pit lane, but Lawrence D and Evil Dragon, Aero Specialist too, all taking, or not Aero Specialist, sorry, Lawrence D, ERT Jordan, Evil Dragon, Speed Quinn, MFC Trunders, all taking advantage of this full course safety car and making their first pit stop of the race. So wow, that was a lot of action there on that first lap. But looking at the position changes there, is there anyone who you think has had a particularly good start?
At the moment, I think I would probably have to say that Neon and Salty Bear and Aerospecial have all gained 7 places from this. A lot of that some of that might be due to the pit stops that have just happened, but at the moment they've put themselves in a pretty good spot. to carry on and have a good finish to the race.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, like you said, those guys who haven't made their pit stops, it's going to be difficult for them to make up the gap. But obviously, if there's another safety car, that's going to benefit them heavily. I think, if I'm not mistaken, intermediates can go the entire race at this USA circuit. So no matter when you box, your tires can go most of the race distance. Maybe the game suggests a one-stop to you. I'm not too sure. But nonetheless, like you said, the two-stop rule still applies in these wet conditions. So everyone who's made a stop so far is going to have a bit of an advantage on the drivers ahead. One man who's got it very, very right is Lawrence D. Obviously fell down 2 positions and is struggling for pace in the wet. But having that advantage of already having made one stop is going to help him out against the likes of Gazaman and Kong Hoffner, and now ERT Jordan, who's going to be putting him under quite a bit of pressure. But yeah, looking at the position changes there, like I said, a couple of people gaining 7 positions. Aero Specialist, the Salty Bear, IRL, Neon, all gaining 7 positions. But I think that's due to the fact that a lot of drivers have already boxed. 6 drivers, if I'm not 5 drivers, I should say, as Rich 500 was actually quite far behind. Was he able to make a stop though? The answer is yes. So we've had 6 drivers made a stop already. So they're going to be in a good position once the safety car restart is underway. But safety car is obviously staying out for one more lap. And while we have a bit of downtime here, I'd like to mention one of OneHub Racing's sponsors. And it's Next Level Racing. They provide some really high quality sim racing gear such as cockpits and play seats. So you should definitely check them out if maybe that's what you're in the market for. I know I have been in that market for a while now, and I could be considering a Next Level Racing cockpit quite soon. So check out their link in the description. But after this safety car restart, we've had a bit of a muddled upgrade. Obviously, like we said, All's, Aero Specialist, Salty Bear, IRL, Neon, all gaining a lot of positions off of this race start. Now that we're in wet conditions and it's a lot harder to overtake, do you see them maintaining these positions on the likes of Lawrence D, ERT Jordan, and Evil Dragon behind?
It is entirely possible, because the wet conditions, it can make things more exciting, but it can also there's no DRS, so overtaking does becoming like vastly more difficult. You have to burn a lot of ERS. Luckily, in these conditions, you can recharge it as well at about the same rate. I've just seen Salty Bear crash out. Was spinning his wheels up, trying to warm them up under the safety car, and he lost control and went straight into a wall, unfortunately retiring from the race. So that gains all the other drivers a position on the grid. Massively unfortunate for Salty Bear there.
Yeah, doing a bit of a Grosjean there under the safety car as he's just too aggressive with the tyre heat up, and is now out of this session. That leaves 11 drivers to go. And, well, so long as you finish this race, you will be getting 2 points. But it's going to be quite difficult to finish, as these wet conditions are really showing a lot of the drivers. They're really posing quite a challenge for these drivers, as we've already seen 2 DNFs. Racing Bomber obviously caused the safety car, and then a Salty Bear DNFing under the safety car. So these drivers are going to have to keep it nice and consistent for the rest of this race. But we're going to ride on board now with Gazaman for this safety car restart. As you can see, leaving quite late coming into this final turn. When is he going to choose his time to go? And it looks like the time is now for Gazaman. And it looks like he doesn't get the best restart up against Kong Hoffner. He's never been the best at the safety car restarts, but he's still ahead coming into turn 1, and I guess that is what matters. You can see MFC Trunders had a spin coming out of the final turn. He has now got no front wing, and that is going to affect his race quite heavily, as he is going to have to come into the pit lane. Rich 500 also losing quite a bit of time. Has he possibly gotten wing damage too? Was there maybe a collision between the two of them? If there was, we sadly were not able to catch it, but those two drivers not having the best of restarts. But Lawrence D has gotten a decent restart. He overtakes Alls and moves himself back into the top 5 and is a pit stop ahead of everyone else in the top 4. So he's in a very, very good position in this Grand Prix so far. But we then have IRL Neon and Aero Specialist, who are both keeping up with the top 2. I think a surprise there is IRL Neon. He's got some good pace shown so far in these wet conditions. Meanwhile, we see the Mercedes and the Red Bull going side by side. Jordan looking to the inside of Alls, coming into turn 12, and he gets that move done on Alls, who concedes the position there. Tries to go for a bit of a switchback move, cannot make it work. Meanwhile, ahead of them, Aero Specialist is defending from Lawrence D. Lawrence D with the outside line into this tricky section. He looks to the inside now. It's a very, very tight line for Lawrence D, who's just about got it turned in there for turn 15. Now has the outside line for this triple right. And you can see he has to back out of that one, as that's never going to work. But it's a snap of oversteer for Aero Specialist, trying to keep his foot as flat to the floor as he can, and then goes wide coming into this penultimate turn, as Evil Dragon gets himself a 3-second time penalty for extending the track limits. That's going to cost him heavily towards the end of this race. But all this battling between Lawrence D and Aero Specialist has now meant that the top 3 have broken a 2-second gap to these guys behind. So this is not helping out either of them at all. But IRL Neon is keeping up with Kong Hoffner, can't keep up with Gazman. So this is some really great pace from IRL Neon.
Yeah, it's he's made a bit of a he's made a bit of a statement so far in this race to keep up with the top 2. Currently in net, like they all the top 4 still have to make their first pit stop of the race, but they if they can make up enough gap, they can all try and stay ahead of Lawrence. But Neon is definitely having a good showing so far in this race.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with you there. You can see he has now lost a bit of time to the top 2, but he's still keeping up decent pace in these conditions. This is a driver, I think every race that he has competed in, I think he has DNF'd, so it's a shame to see that he has DNF'd in all of his rounds, but now showing that maybe he's got more pace than we thought, as you can see he's starting to lose a little bit more time. So the mistakes starting to creep in. You can see a little bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 13, now into turn 15, using 5th gear out of here. So he's been making a couple of mistakes, so he's now playing it extra cautious, using 5th gear on the exit of turn 15, and upshifting quite a bit to make sure that he keeps the back end in check. Meanwhile, ERS Kong Hoffner is struggling to keep up with our race leader of Gazaman, so this is a good opportunity for Gazaman to take advantage of this. Sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix of a 1:49.6. He's continuing to push on at the front of the grid. You can see the gaps are fluctuating quite a bit, and I think that's due to the drivers making mistakes in some parts of the laps, whereas being a little stronger in other parts, and that's definitely bound to happen in such tricky conditions. But ERS Kong Hoffner, he's hovering between 1.3 seconds and 8 tenths. Right now it's 1.1, and IRL Neon starting to gain a little bit of time in this first sector. I think he starts to lose a little bit of it in the final sector. So looking at the gaps and looking at the pace so far, it looks like the grid is pretty neutral right now, wouldn't you have to say?
Yeah, everyone's kind of found a second or two gap away from each other, apart from maybe Evil Dragon and ERT Jordan, who seem to be within the 5/10 range. So there's not really a lot of battling going on right now, but it all comes down to strategy. Who picked, especially in that top 4, when did they decide to pick, and what tyres did. Because at the moment, looking at the weather on our task system, the rain is looking to be stopping at some point during the race. So we might end up on some dry tyres by the end of it, and that might be why those top 4 didn't pit. They know they might have to go on to dry tyres eventually, so they're going to get the most out of those when they can.
Yeah, that definitely could be a strategy from some of the top guys, but it's a good strategy from all the drivers, because all the drivers within box, they have that opportunity to make the most of the dry tires once they go onto them. As Gazaman, continues to set faster and faster lap times. Goes a tenth faster than he did on lap 5 as we now enter lap 7. So yeah, Lawrence D, I think he has a little bit more flexibility than the other guys because he's already made a stop, so he doesn't have to box for another set of inters. He can go to mediums, he can go to hard softs depending on how long's left in the race. But I think just the fact that he's already made a stop and has only really lost 2 positions because of it, I think it's definitely given him a lot more flexibility towards the back end of this race. But you can see continuing to struggle for pace in these wet conditions. Meanwhile, IRL Neon starting to close the gap on Kong Hoffner ahead. It went from about 2.2 seconds now down to 1.6. Meanwhile, Aero Specialist is keeping a decent pace to keep up with his new little rival there of IRL Neon in the Aston Martin. But yeah, like you said, not too many battles going on right now. But I think the main thing that all these drivers are now focusing on is the consistency. Because if you make a big mistake here, and they're definitely easy to make those big mistakes, you could be losing a lot of time and position. So if you keep it consistent, and if you have a decent pace with a good level of consistency, you'll be looking good in this race. I think someone who's shown that so far is Gazaman as he continues to pull away from Kong Hoffner. But that's exactly why I was talking about consistency. MFC Trunders has DNF from the session, and that has now released the full course safety car for the second time this race. So you can see Gazaman, though, he fakes going into the pit lane and baits ERS Kong Hoffner into going into the pits, and that's exactly what he does IRL Neon too, although I think IRL Neon was already pretty committed to that. But he gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. A bit of a rookie error there, and that is going to cost him dearly in this race. He was on the battle for a podium, but after a 5-second penalty like that, he could be dropping down to possibly P6 or so. But you can see he's dropped quite a few positions relative to people like Lawrence D, ERT Jordan, Evo Dragon, people who have already made a stop in this race, and they're anticipating that change to dry weather. So they obviously think, well, we don't need to make another stop for inters because we still have to make another stop to go on to fresh dry tires once the time comes. But one man who's looking to go for a 2-stop once the dries come out is Gazaman. So an interesting strategy from him. I'm fairly sure, if I'm not mistaken, he's the only man not to have boxed himself and also 2 Red Bull teammates. You think there's a bit of a different strategy going on in the Red Bull garage?
Definitely. I think it is best for teams to stay on an alternate strategy, and so I think an alternate strategy might work if one doesn't work out. But also, just to go on to a different topic, I've just seen IRL Neon spin it through the S section, and he's lost his front wing. So he will have to come into the pits again.
Yeah, and a driver who was looking so good in this race, he kept it consistent, but then got that 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Now lost his front wing, has to box again for another set of intermediate compound tyres, and he's not going to be happy with himself after that one. And under safety car conditions too, it's just disappointing from his end. But obviously with the intermediate compound tyres, when they're cold coming out of the pit lane and it's wet conditions, it's very hard to keep it under control. That's why you need to take it nice and easy on your outlap, and if you don't, well, we see exactly what happens in the form of IRL Neon. So he's going to have to come into the pit lane again. He's not going to lose many positions. He's only going to lose the position to Rich 500, who's been brought back into this race because of this safety car. I think he was about 20 seconds off this top 9 or top 10 it would have been, as MFC Trunders was still in the race beforehand. But yeah, it's going to bring him back in this race. He now has a chance to fight once again. But Gazaman now making a late stop onto another set of intermediate compound tires. So a bit of an interesting strategy from Gazaman, you'd have to say, as he's now boxed very late and lost all of his track position as IRL Neon comes into the pit lane and retires from the session, which is a bit of an odd strategy because he would have come out in P10 and he would have been battling for P9 with people like Gazaman. Rich 500 Aerospecially still had a good chance of decent points, but after that spin in wet conditions. It's obviously made him a bit angry. But something that's even more interesting is Gazaman has gone onto the medium compounded tyres. Now, it obviously doesn't look like dry conditions, but the game has a tendency to look like it's wet when it's actually dry. So, an interesting strategy from Gazaman. Do you see this possibly working out, or do you think the track is just too wet? Because so far he seems to be struggling on his outlap.
From the visuals and from seeing Gazaman just driving around there, he seems to be struggling. He's hoping that he might be able to keep the safety car out an extra lap, and maybe the conditions change. But it's definitely interesting. He's taking a massive risk, possibly giving up any chance for a race win he has at the moment. And I do sincerely hope that it works for him. But with how the track looks and how everything just looks at the moment, I don't know if it's the right choice.
Yeah, neither do I at this stage of the race. You can see there's a tiny bit of a dry line emerging, but not really. That's just the tyre treads from Rich 500 ahead of him. So, I don't think this is the right strategy from Gazaman. But before we get the safety car restart underway, I'd like to mention another one of One Hub Racing sponsors, which is Pure Sim Gear. They provide some great racing gloves, and they actually give a free pair of racing gloves to the driver who has the most pole positions and fastest laps combined over a race season. And well, that driver will be getting their award quite soon, as there's only this round and one more round to go, as obviously this is the penultimate round. So if you want to get yourself a set of racing gloves, go check out their link in the description. But we're now getting ready for the safety car restart, riding on board with the Ferrari driver of Lawrence D. And we'll have to see what kind of restart he can get. He started on pole, fell all the way towards the middle of the field after making that early stop, and he's now back at the front of the grid. But like we've seen with his pace, it's not been the best. So let's see if he can possibly maintain this lead. He's gone quite early compared to Gazaman. Maybe a couple of drivers not expecting it. You can see he's broken a decent gap to Jordan behind. 9/10 is the gap between the top two. So it's a good restart there from Lawrence D. A very solid one. And he'll be happy with that one. No one really looking for a move, although maybe Kong Hofner to the outside of Speed Quinn into turn one, braking nice and late, but just cannot get that move done on Speed Quinn ahead. Decides to go for the better exit on the run to the S section, but you're not really going to be going for any moves past lap one coming into the section. So Kong Hofner maintaining P6 for the time being. Gazaman on the medium compound tyres, struggling to carry any speed at all. You can see going through the S section with 4th gear when you'd usually be taking 7th in the dry and 6th in the wet. You can see big snap of oversteer there. He's got no grip. He's completely aquaplaning in these conditions, and a risky strategy that definitely has not worked out for him. And I just don't see the reason why he took that risk. He was controlling the front of the grid. If he had boxed when the safety car first came out, he wouldn't have had to make another stop in this race. He could have gone to intermediate compound tyres, but instead he's now at the back of the grid on the wrong compound of tyres, and has pretty much no chance of this race win, unless of course there is another safety car, which there is always a chance of. But now that we've only got 9 drivers left in this race, the chances severely decrease. So do you think that was the right play from Gazaman, or really does this look like it's going to hurt him a lot?
I'm still holding out a bit of hope for him, because I think he's trying to he's trying to predict the weather change before anyone else, and maybe within the time where it changes from the damp or wet conditions to the dries, he can make up that time before the other drivers get to the pits. I think that's what his plan was, or what he can do from now, but at the moment it's not looking good for him.
Yeah, you can see the track is definitely drying as Lawrence D hits the new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, although he's showing some good pace now because he's broken a 1 second gap to Jordan behind, and that pace that he didn't have early on in these wet conditions is now starting to get better as the track begins to dry, although his teammate now getting a 3-second time penalty for extending the track limits. But even if the weather does dry in the next few laps, the only problem is Gazaman, if we take a look at the gap to leader, is now pretty much a pit stop behind the leader of Lawrence D. So he's not going to be coming out in a good position. But you can see the track is now definitely starting to dry. We're only seeing a few raindrops, and we're definitely seeing dry line emerge. You can see parts of the track that don't have any water on it. So he's now getting very close to wet conditions, but I don't think it has worked out for him. Although maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to jump Lawrence D coming out of the pit lane, because it looks like he's starting to gain a little bit of pace to the guys at the top. We're going to keep an eye on the gap to leader to see what kind of time he can gain. He's now 19.0 seconds behind the leader of Lawrence D, and technically, if Lawrence D was to box now, he would come out ahead, but he would obviously have about 2 or 3 more laps of tyre wear. But you can see the track is now bone dry, so we're going to expect the intermediate runners to come into the pit lane, and that's exactly what they've done. So maybe your hope for Gazelman that I didn't really have is true. Maybe it's going to happen that he's going to be able to jump all these guys, Lawrence D, onto the hard compounded tires. He doesn't think the mediums can make it, so that's actually another thing to know. Gazelman went on to mediums at lap 10, and will they be able to last 18 laps? That's a very long time for medium compound tires to go. He might be in puncture territory towards the end of the Grand Prix. But you can see he's been jumped by Lawrence D, but Lawrence D is now on cold, hard compound tires, but he's going to battle with Gazelman nonetheless. Gazelman has the inside line for this S section, I should say, and he gets P1, so he has made that strategy work out. But the only problem is now he's got 3 lap older tires, and at least I'm doubting that those mediums can actually make it to the end, as he's going to have to stretch them 18 laps. Maybe people that have boxed now 16 laps on the mediums seems a lot more doable than what would be 19 or 18 for Gazelman. So yeah, towards the end of the race, could we see Gazelman possibly in puncture territory, do you think?
Yeah, from just looking, I'm pretty sure the medium tyres will only last around about 15, 16 laps around the circuit, so I think Gazelman will definitely try and move to the softs come the end of the race, and hopefully these medium tyres will give him a good enough gap where he will be competitive on the soft when he decides to move them. He still does have to make his second stop of the race, along with his teammate Ols as well.
Yeah, so they went for a very different strategy. Didn't box under either of the safety cars. Obviously, Gazelman boxed under the second one, but I ended up only gaining a couple of tenths on Lawrence, and also has another stop to make in this race. We will, I think you're dead right with that. He'll be going to another set of soft compound tires before the end of the race. We need to pull out a massive gap on Lawrence D, as the soft tires compared to the hard tires in a race scenario. If I had to guess, Gazelman is going to be gaining about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds a lap. So if you can pull out a little bit of a gap now, early on in his stint, while he has the fresh mediums, and Lawrence is obviously on hard tires. Lawrence actually gets a 3-second time penalty for extending the track limits, so that's going to hurt him later on in this race. But yeah, like I said, if Gazelman can break DRS to Lawrence, he definitely has a chance of making this strategy work, although the longer this goes on for, the longer Lawrence maintains the DRS, the less likely it's looking for a race win for Gazelman. But Lawrence D, he obviously showed his pace in the wet, wasn't great, but in qualifying, we have to remember now, he got pole position by 8/1000ths of a second, so showing that his pace in the dry is good in qualifying, and he's now keeping a 4/10 gap to Gazelman ahead, 3/10 now. He's actually gained time since last lap, so he's got very good pace in the dry. That 3-second time penalty, though, it's going to do him a lot of bad at the end of the race once we go through the final classification. So yeah, do we think maybe Gazelman can make this strategy work out, or could we see someone like ERT Jordan on for today's race win?
I would say ERT Jordan's in a very good spot, because obviously Lawrence has his penalty, which if Jordan keeps it within that distance of and Evil Dragon as well, who Jordan's currently battling with, also has a penalty. So Jordan kind of has a bit of a breathing room with the penalties, and obviously Gazelman needs to make his stop. So it depends on. I think it depends on when Gazelman goes onto that set of soft tyres and how fast will he be on those compared to Jordan, who will be on his medium tyres until the end most likely. It just depends on how fast Gazelman will be in comparison to Jordan. I think Jordan is a driver to look out for.
I definitely have to agree. Keeping it consistent and getting no penalties in this race could do wonders towards the end. But someone we haven't really been talking about ever since these dry conditions have emerged is ERS Kong Hofner, and he's gotten very, very unlucky. Got held in the pit lane by this brand new pit stop glitch that CODEMASTERS has presented us with. And it's a tendency where when you're in the pit lane, your car comes to a full stop. You can see Lawrence there makes the move on Gazman for the lead of the Grand Prix. So he has hard compound tires compared to Gazman's mediums, and he's still got better pace. So Lawrence is looking very good so far. But if he wants to win this race, he needs to break a 3-second gap to ERT Jordan behind. But yeah, like I was saying with Kong Hofner, got completely stopped in the pit lane, and that is why he is currently about 6 seconds off of the race lead. But he did set the fastest lap on lap 13 of 28. That's a spin there for Gazaman. And the Red Bull driver, with an extra stop yet to make, is not put himself in a good position because of that. That was a spin coming into the penultimate left-hander there. And is now in a very, very bad position because he still has a stop to make and is now quite a ways off the lead of this race. So he's now going to be battling with ERS Kong Hofner, who's currently P5 now after that spin from Gazaman. So Kong Hofner has definitely got a good chance at making up some good ground to Gazaman behind. And, you know, if he pushes hard enough and really makes the difference, he could even be looking at a podium in this Grand Prix, which would be very good for him. Even though he did qualify P3, that pit stop has definitely lost about 5 or 6 seconds. So to make up that difference would be absolutely phenomenal from the Alfa Romeo driver. But Gazaman, now that he's had that spin, 1.3 seconds off of Aero Specialist, and he's actually losing time to Aero Specialist ahead, along with only having about 13% ERS. So Gazaman, could we maybe see him finishing about P8 in this race?
Yeah, there's possibility. I would say P7 seems to be a kind of like no man's land at the moment, but he does have Quinn kind of bearing down on him if Quinn can make up that time. Obviously, Gazaman has a pit stop, so P8 is a pretty solid prediction at the moment. It's a huge shame for Gazaman because he made that call for the mediums when no one else really did it. It did benefit him to a point. I see Gazaman diving straight into the pits now, presumably to put on maybe a fresh set of mediums or softs. If he can take the softs about 12 laps again, he's definitely stretching it. He has moved on too hard till the end of the race, so maybe he's hoping for a bit of stability in his tyres. But yeah, so Gazaman needs to now catch up to Quinn. And Quinn does have a penalty, so he does have a bit of a second chance at that. But Rich will jump him. Rich is coming up. He will have pressure from Rich as well on 4-lap off softs. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame for Gazaman, as now his championship rivals, Kong Hofner and Aero Specialist, are now 2 and 3 places ahead of him. So that kind of puts Gazaman in a pretty tough spot going into next week.
Yeah, it definitely does. But anything can happen in these final 12 laps. We could still have a safety car. If Gazaman is lucky, he'll get a safety car. But meanwhile, ERT Jordan and Evil Dragon really going at it as ERT Jordan gets pushed off of the track there. Evil Dragon moves himself up into P2 and he needs to break a gap to ERT Jordan behind. Meanwhile, someone else who's having a very rough battle is ERS Kong Hofner and Aero Specialist. So you can see these drivers are really starting to get rough with each other, pushing each other off track, going for big dive bombs, and a lot of contact between a lot of these drivers. So yeah, some big moves starting to come out, but that's a mistake from our race leader of Lawrence Steve, is looking to possibly win this Grand Prix once ERT Jordan's tyres started to die off. But those chances of winning the race are now seeming slim as he's down in P6 behind Kong Hofner and Aero Specialist. We now have Evil Dragon in the AlphaTauri. Like I said, we've had a different race winner every week, and I said it was Evil Dragon's turn. He's now leading this race, and once ERT Jordan's tyres start to go off, he may well win this race. So we could see that streak of a new driver every week winning the Grand Prix, but ERT Jordan is still in the DRS, still on the mediums, still has a little life in these mediums, but you can see he's lost DRS to Evil Dragon, so Evil Dragon is now in an amazing position to possibly win this race. Aero Specialist is now the 4th man to get a 3-second time penalty on the back of Kong Hoffner. Kong Hoffner starting to gain a little bit of time to Alls, who is now in a net P2. So Alls has been showing some great consistency and decent pace in these final couple of rounds, as Aero Specialist now makes the move on Kong Hoffner on the run down into turn 12, promotes himself into P4, but with that 3-second time penalty, it'll drop him right back down to P5 towards the end of the race. But wow, a lot just happened there in those last couple of laps, and we're now seeing a bit of a mixed order here. Who do you think could possibly be finishing on the podium in this race if we don't see another safety car?
I think it is safe to say that the top 3 we are looking at right now could very well be the finishing top 3. With only 10 laps to go, Kong Hoffner still has to make his way past Aero Specialist, and I don't think he's going to give up that position so easily. So I would say these top 3, any order of these top 3, ERT Jordan with no penalties at this time is looking pretty good. If he sticks behind Evil Dragon, Alls can pull up the gap. He could finish in P2 as well. So we'll just have to wait and see in how he's scored in these next 10 laps.
Well, if you're going to have to predict the top 3 on the podium, I obviously have to go a different way. And I predict Kong Hoffner is going to promote himself to P2. Right now, he's in the DRS of Aero Specialist, who's just come off of setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so they're gaining time to Alls ahead. And if Kong Hoffner can overtake Alls, well, he'll be in a net P2 because of Evil Dragon's penalties. So Kong Hoffner in a great position, could possibly win this race if he has better pace than Jordan. So, yeah, Kong Hoffner, he just needs to start pushing really hard. I mean, he has lost the DRS to Aero Specialist ahead, though. But once Aero Specialist gets caught in the traffic of Alls, he's going to be losing a little bit of time. Meanwhile, ERT Jordan had a little bit of a look around the outside of Evil Dragon. So you can see the hard tires are not yet faster than the mediums. So Jordan is still putting plenty of pressure under Evil Dragon. But cannot make the move stick just yet. Meanwhile, Kong Hoffner losing a little bit of time to Aero Specialist ahead, who's almost gained the DRS of Alls. He had about 60% ERS about 2 or 3 laps ago. He's now down to just 15 or 20%. So you can see he's really been pushing with the ERS to make up the time that he has. And he's now well and truly in the DRS of Alls. It's a good strategy from Aero Specialist, saving up all that ERS and then breaking the DRS to the man he's been battling most of this, mostly in these dry conditions. So broken the DRS to Kong Hoffner. He now needs to get past Alls as quickly as possible, because if he gets stuck behind Alls, well, ERS Kong Hoffner is going to get right back in to that DRS Aero Specialist. We might even see him finishing on the podium, but obviously he has to break a 3-second gap to people like Kong Hoffner and Alls. So these 3-second time penalties really hurting some drivers. Lawrence D, once again, inconsistency starting to creep in as he has a spin coming into the middle sector. That's the second spin in these dry conditions, and surprisingly that little spin from Lawrence has triggered the full course safety car. So that tiny little spin there from Lawrence D has caused a big chain reaction, as we're now seeing drivers get drive-through penalties for speeding under the safety car. That's the 2 Ferraris getting drive-through penalties. They now have to serve that after the safety car comes into pit lane. So wow, tiny spin from Lawrence, and well, the FIA have thought, well, let's put out the safety car. Who do you think is really going to benefit from this, and do you see any drivers coming into the pit lane?
I think the driver that will benefit the most likely be Alls, because I forgot when I was talking about him last time. He does have to make a second stop, which now surely everyone will be moving on to a fresh set of soft tyres. So Alls is in perfect position at the moment he'll most likely keep his position and be on a fresh set of softs for this last 8 or 9 lap shootout we're going to have right now.
And you can see there the drivers beginning to come into the pit lane. One man who opts not to box is Evil Dragon, and you have to ask the question, was that the right strategy? He has a 3-second time penalty, so realistically his best chance would have been to go on to softs no matter what, but he's opted to stay out, and he's now going to have a very difficult time staying ahead of all of the drivers, and also keeping a 3-second gap between himself and the rest of the drivers. You can see Colin Hoffner getting a little bit more luck in the pit lane this time, because he jumps Aero Specialist, who was about 1.5 seconds up the road. So you can see truly how broken the pit lane is in this game. Colin Hoffner now takes P4, and well, he's looking very good for a race win now. If he overtakes ERT Jordan, he will be in a net P1, and with the power of the soft compound tires, he's going to have more pace than Evil Dragon. He doesn't have to worry about Speed Quinn, because Speed Quinn has a drive-through penalty once the safety car comes into pit lane. Obviously, in Formula 1, you cannot serve a drive-through penalty under safety car conditions. Otherwise, obviously, the penalty would not be as severe. You'd only be losing 14 seconds compared to about 23. So, yeah, Speed Quinn is pretty much in a net last, along with Lawrence, who's also got a drive-through penalty to serve. Evil Dragon is on hard tires, so he's going to have absolutely no pace for the rest of this race. The soft tires, like I said before, the delta is about 1.5 seconds between the hards and the softs. And the fact that Evil Dragon is on 8-lap old hard compound tires is only going to make that delta even bigger. So ERT Jordan, ERS Colin Hoffner, and Alls, the Red Bull driver, who's wasn't really that fast towards the start of the season. He's gained a lot of pace throughout it, and is now looking for, if I'm not mistaken, this would be his very first podium in the P3 tier. Just looking to confirm that. And yeah, I think it would be his very first podium. So let's see if he can get that. Meanwhile, we have people like Aero Specialist and Evil Dragon. They both have 3-second time penalties, so they're going to have to push quite hard to make the difference to people like Colin Hoffner, Jordan, Alls, and now Gazaman is brought back into the battle. So yeah, Gazaman, he's on the fresh set of softs, even playing field, but he was struggling once it turned back to dry conditions. So do you think he's going to be battling for a podium, or do you think his struggles in the dry conditions are going to continue on?
I hope not, because we keep the championship battle interesting going into the last race. You earlier, you might have been correct about Colin Hoffner possibly getting himself on the podium with Evil Dragon having a penalty. Quinn needs to serve his drive-through. Gazaman needs to have a bit of damage control at this point. He has 2 guaranteed positions from Lawrence and Speed Quinn with their drive-throughs, and then he has to keep within Aero Specialist, who has a penalty, and then he has. But it's just depending on whether they pull a little team orders between him and Alls, his teammate. So it's Aero Specialist and Alls that stands between him and Colin Hoffner at the moment, and he needs to try and get as close to Colin Hoffner as possible.
Yeah, definitely. He will have to do exactly that. He needs to limit the amount of points that Colin Hoffner scores over him, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be even able to beat Colin Hoffner in this race, although that's a big ask at this stage, because once the safety car comes into the pit lane, we're only going to have 7 laps of racing on these soft compound tires. Meanwhile, Evil Dragon and Lawrence are on the hards and mediums. But just before we get the safety car restart underway, as it is going to be coming in this lap, I'd like to mention another one of One Hub Racing sponsors, and that is Gamer Goo. They make this great cream that you can put on your hands to stop all that pesky sweat from your hands sticking to your controller, or maybe you're losing grip on your wheel. I would definitely go check them out, as it'd definitely be very helpful for someone like me who gets very sweaty palms when I'm playing video games. So go check out their link in the description and get yourself some Gamer Goo today. But we are now getting ready for this safety car restart. Evil Dragon is leading this race for AlphaTauri. He has a 3-second time penalty. He's on hard compound tires compared to everyone else on soft compound tires. So not only is he going to be struggling for grip, he's going to be struggling for tire temperature on the safety car restart. And the fact that he's not weaving to heat up his tires is not going to help him in any shape or form. So We're not expecting a good safety car restart here from Evil Dragon. The safety car is now into the pit lane. Evil Dragon picks his time to go, and Speedquin instantly pulls into the pit lane to serve his drive-through penalty. So we now have ERT Jordan, who is released to catch up to Evil Dragon ahead. And we're just going to ride on board with Kong Hofner, who looks to the inside into turn 1. A late move there from Kong Hofner to try and make up the position on Jordan. Cannot get that move done. Jordan maintains P2. We're now going to see the grip difference between the hards and the softs coming through the X section. You can see the amount of speed Jordan can carry compared to Evil Dragon, and through that X section alone he's gained about 3/10 and is now well and truly on the back of Evil Dragon. Meanwhile, Kong Hofner putting heavy pressure under the net race leader of ERT Jordan. Kong Hofner knows that he can win this race, and his main competitor in this race is going to be Jordan, because he's got Aero Specialist with the penalty and Evil Dragon on hards with the penalty. So it's going to be a race win battle between Jordan and Kong Hofner. You can see Kong Hofner using plenty of his ERS to try and find a way past into turn 12. ERT Jordan is doing exactly the same as it's 3 wide into this turn 12, and now you can see it's Kong Hofner's hit into the rear wheel of ERT Jordan. Does he have wing damage after that? We'll have to see from his pace afterward, but he's now going side by side with Evil Dragon. He makes his way into P2. Evil Dragon is not giving it up though, as it looked like Kong Hofner almost turned in on the Evil Dragon there going into turn 15. This has lost him quite a bit of time to the race leader. Aero Specialist makes contact with Evil Dragon into the triple right-hander. He's fallen all the way down to P7. Evil Dragon causing a lot of trouble for these soft compound running drivers, and Gazaman finds himself in P4 podium, and he's now just a couple of tenths behind his championship rival. So how this game has changed, how this race has changed dramatically in the past couple of laps. We had Gazaman, who was about 20 seconds off of P8 a couple of laps ago, and now he's here P4 and battling it out with Evil Dragon and his championship rival. Meanwhile, ERT Jordan is looking to pull away from Kong Hofner after all that battling. Does Kong Hofner possibly have wing damage? I'm not too sure, because his front wing looks just fine, and he's actually gaining time on the Mercedes driver ahead of him. All's in P5 now, and Red Bull could possibly be looking for a double podium if All's drives an absolutely incredible final few laps. We'll have to see if that works out. Rich has had a great recovery, as he was quite far down. I think he was P9 and 20 seconds off of the grid a couple of laps ago, but he's now up into P6 and the net P5. Gazaman makes the move on Evil Dragon coming into turn 12. Meanwhile, Kong Hofner continues to push on to try and get within that crucial DRS of ERT Jordan, but so far he's had 2 laps to try and catch into that gap, and so far he has not gone into that 1 second range of the DRS. Lawrence D retires from the session after a spin in the S section, and the safety car once again is released from the pit lane. The 4th safety car in this Grand Prix, and that is not good at all for ERT Jordan, who had pulled out a good gap on Kong Hofner, but that gap is now neutralized because of the safety car, and Jordan pulls into the pit lane. That is an interesting play, but Kong Hofner, Evil Dragon does the same. Evil Dragon, some interesting tactics going into the pit lane there. Actually dived down the inside of Gazman coming into the pit lane, so he gained a position there. Let's see if the pit stop glitch affects any of these drivers. Don't think it has affected anyone just yet, so everyone getting away cleanly out of the pit lane. Although I think that was a bit of lag there. Evil Dragon looked like he might have, but has anyone jumped anyone? It looks like Evil Dragon jumps Gazaman after diving down the inside on the entry of the pit lane. We now have Alls, who leads this race on 4-lap old softs, with Rich right behind him now on the podium. So wow, we have a very mixed grid here, and Speed Quinn now has a chance to get back into the battle for some decent points. With Lawrence D obviously causing that safety car, he went from pole position to now out of this race, so shame for him. But after this safety car, we will not have any more safety cars, as the game no longer releases safety cars after about lap 25, I think it is. It cannot release it in the final 4 or 3 laps. So this will be the final safety car. So how do you see the podium? What do you predict are going to be the top 3 podium runners in this race?
I think it's been changed up a lot right now, because this safety car and everyone decided to dive into the pit. It brought Ols and Rich right into it, who despite being on 4 lap older tyres, they will start to go off it, but they've only got to hold on for possibly 3 or 4 more laps, which I think is entirely possible for them if they can keep try and drain as much pace as they can from those tyres. It is between everyone from Ols to Gazman. Evil Dragon does have his penalty, which unfortunately a late safety car with a penalty always hurts a driver. Like, it will always hurt them so much. So I think it's between Ols, Rich, Jordan, Konghofner and Gazman for the time being, going into these last few laps. So I think it's anyone's game between them 3.
Yeah, it's going to be very close between these drivers, like you said. And podium, you know, it could be anyone's game, really, in my opinion. If I had to pick a podium, I think it'd definitely be ERT Jordan possibly winning this race. He had great pace on Konghofner. He broke that 1 second gap, and then he was able to maintain a 1.2 second gap to Konghofner behind. So he's shown some good pace, and he now has fresher tyres in the top 2. But don't count out Ols or Rich, because they only have 5 lap old soft compound tyres, so they are going to be a lot more worn. They're going to have a good bit less grip, but I think we could definitely see one of them at least finishing in the top 5 in this race, as we have 3 drivers with penalties, so they're pretty much guaranteed the top 5, but maybe they can finish even higher. Gazman down in P6 though, that's not the position that he wants to be in, as he's got Evil Dragon between himself and Konghofner, and we can see Evil Dragon has been battling so hard this race, even when he was on hard tyres, and he probably would have been better off letting the soft runners through. Didn't want to let it through. He's very stubborn about letting drivers through, so he's going to continue to battle it out with ERS Konghofner and Gazman, even though he might not be battling it out for position. But before we get this safety car restart underway, I'd like to mention one of One Hub Racing's partners, and that is SimGrid. SimGrid is a website where One Hub essentially deals with all of their sign-ups, standings, drivers, results, everything you can find there on the SimGrid website. And you can also get yourself signed up for next season if you want to race in the P1, the P2, the P3 or the P4 tier. If I'm not mistaken, it's €5 to sign up, as obviously here in One Hub Racing we have a prize pool for the race winners. We see possibly a little bit of contact there between Konghofner, but yeah, if you want to go check them out, they also run there's a lot of F1 leagues and a lot of ASSETTO, CORSA, COMPETIZIONE leagues that run on that website, so definitely go check it out in the link in the description. But we see some interesting tactics there between Konghofner and Evil Dragon. Konghofner leaving quite a bit of a gap to Jordan ahead, and I think Evil Dragon could have possibly made contact with the back of Konghofner, but no 5-second time penalty was given, so maybe not. So you can see All's really slowing down to let the safety car get back into the pit lane, but you can see how slow the safety car is going through this very mechanical grip section. Obviously it's I think here in Coda it's the Aston Martin safety car, so it's a lot slower than a Formula 1 car, so struggles for grip through there, but it's now getting its way back into the pit lane. We have Alls leading us away for this restart, so we're going to ride on board and see what kind of restart he can get. He has old soft compound tyres, so he's going to struggle for grip compared to the guys behind him. You can see the time to go is now, but I think his throttle has been regulated by the game, so he had to brake there on the straight, but still manages to get a decent restart compared to Rich 500. We have now Evil Dragon trying to put Konghofner under a little bit of pressure. Gazman, Konghofner and Evil Dragon, these guys are going to be battling it out super hard for this race. You can see that's a lock up there from Evil Dragon, goes straight on at turn 1, loses the position to Gazman. You can see weaving on the exit. He must have been low on tire temps going through turn 1, and that's why he just locked up so badly. So he's now down in P6, but ERT Jordan with the fresher soft compound tires, putting Rich 500 under a lot of pressure, can't make a move into these turns, although not using any of his ERS yet. That's because he's waiting for the exit of turn 11. We're now coming into turn 11, a late apex for ERT Jordan. That's because it's exit over entry for him, using the ERS to find a way past Rich 500, and you can see Rich 500 just pulls over to the left there. They make contact and they both lost their front wings, and Rich 500 defending that position a little too hard. I'm not too sure who's at fault for that, but they are now both P7 and P8. ERT Jordan, who was looking so good for this race win, is now essentially running P8, and that's pretty much where he's going to finish, as he has to box for a new front wing, unless he just wants to stick it out instead. But yeah, good chance at a race win for him, but that chance is now gone, as he's down in P8 with no front wings. It was a shame to see, and it's going to be really frustrating from him, because obviously there's a driver who's on another strategy, slower tires than you are, and they defend their position like that. It's never a good feeling. So yeah, it's a shame to see from ERT. Jordan was looking so good for a race win, but we now see ERS Kong Hofner setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. He's now putting pressure under Gazaman's teammate of Alls, but Alls is in P1, 7-lap old soft compound tyres. He's only got to hang on to this position for 2 more laps, so if he manages his ERS smartly, he could look at his first race win here in the P3 tier. And what a shock that would be if the Red Bull driver could get not only onto the podium for the first time, but get a race win. We'll have to see. He's keeping a decent gap to Kong Hofner in a pretty mechanical grip section of the track. Obviously we have the S section, and then it slows down towards the end of it, so managed to keep a good gap there. You can see using all of his ERS though, his red light is now flashing, so Kong Hofner maintaining the ERS, and he now looks to the inside, tries to scare Alls off of his line. Doesn't do so successfully though, but he has now got a 50% ERS advantage over Alls. And do you think Alls is going to be able to defend this position now with worn tyres and less ERS?
I'm not entirely sure, because Kong Hofner has always shown himself to be really good at overtaking this season. So I would expect him to make a move past him, especially going to the last lap. He's going to be desperate to make that move. But so is also Gazaman. What Gazaman's job is now is to try and follow Kong Hofner past Alls as quick as possible, and maybe even try and snatch a move. I do believe we are getting DRS this lap, so it is down to Alls is unfortunately a bit of a sit and duck, and it is up to him to see if he can defend it smartly. But Kong Hofner and Gazaman definitely have the advantage over Alls, so them two are vying for the race win. And will Gazaman want to try and dive down Kong Hofner and try and snatch this winner right from underneath Kong Hofner's nose? We'll have to see once we get on this back straight, because I imagine that's where this move is going to be taking place. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry to interrupt you there. I was just going to say I definitely agree with you there. Turn 11 is going to be the prime overtaking spot for these guys, and Gazaman and Kong Hofner. With Gazaman not having the advantage of DRS over Kong Hofner because they both have DRS, it kind of neutralizes out. You can see he gets a better exit than Kong Hofner. Coming into turn 1, Kong Hofner hasn't got a bunch of straight line speed, and he's not actually using any of his ERS, which is quite surprising to see. He goes to the outside line coming into turn 11. Gazaman dives to the inside, pushes Kong Hofner wide. Kong Hofner wheel spin on the exit of turn 12. Gazaman has moved himself up into P1. You really have to question Kong Hofner's 60% ERS. Why didn't he use it down that back straight? He could have easily secured the win. Gazaman now has the lead of this race, and the chances of Kong Hofner winning this race are looking less and less likely. Gazaman coming into the penultimate turn now. Can Kong Hofner possibly get a better exit? No, he can't. He misses the apex of the final turn. So Gazaman is going to be the first driver in the P3 tier to win 2 races in a row. He wins the USA Grand Prix and takes the lead of the championship away from Kong Hofner, and he now has a 3-point lead in the championship heading into the final round. And Alls getting his very first podium and doing Red Bull proud. If I'm not mistaken, I think Red Bull have now actually secured the championship, the Constructors' Championship, so a great job from Red Bull today to get that done. They've been doing very well all season. Gazaman, obviously a championship contender, and Alls, who's gotten very consistent points finishing results, and now his first podium of the season. He's going to be very happy with that. But Toma, I have to ask you this. Why didn't Kong Hofner use his DRS down that back straight? He could have easily won this race if he had used that 60% ERS that he had, but instead he has to settle for P2.
I guess he just didn't think that Gazaman would make that kind of move that he did, and maybe he thought that Kong Hofner might have thought that maybe you needed that ERS boost right at the end of the lap if he's put under pressure. But Gazzaman came through with it's a good thing he's a Red Bull, because that was a Max Verstappen style move, and that move itself could be championship winning. So yeah, Konghofner might have made the mistake of not using ERS to pull up a big enough gap, so Gazzaman couldn't have made that move. But I'm sure he has his own reason for that, and I don't think he expected Gazzaman to make that style move.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I really, if I'm gonna keep saying it. If Konghofner just used his ERS there, obviously didn't expect the move from Gazzaman, there could be some post-steward reports there, possibly, but it could have been easily avoided by Konghofner. So Gazzaman takes that race win. Like I said, a Max Verstappen style move from the Red Bull driver, but he had to do it. He's getting desperate in these final stages of this championship battle. Only one more round to go, and he now has the lead heading into the final round. So what that means is he is the driver to beat in the finale of the season 21. So Konghofner could have gotten a good result today, but instead he has to settle for P2 after questionable strategy going down the back straight. Alls from P9 to P3 does a great job for Red Bull. Gets his first podium of the season. He'll be happy with that one. Speed Quinn finishes P4 after all of that, getting that drive through, and also the fast lap of the Grand Prix. So good result for Speed Quinn. Aero Specialist though finishing down in P5 and just about keeping himself mathematically in this championship battle, but the chances of him winning it all are very, very unlikely. So I think the main fight is going to be between Gazzaman and Konghofner. But if I had to give a driver of the day to one of these drivers, it's extremely difficult to give it to someone. But if I had to give it to one person, I think it's going to have to be Alls. He gets his first podium of the season, decides to stick it out on worn soft compound tires. Great strategy at the end, kept it consistent all race, 0 spins, and gets his first podium and secures the Constructors' Championship for Red Bull, if I'm not mistaken. So my driver of the day goes to Alls, and my question would have to be, on that final safety car restart, were you worried that you were going to finish in the back end of the grid on worn soft compound tires? But ERT Toma, who would you have to give your driver of the day to?
I'm going to have to throw my driver of the day over to Speed Quinn, because I think that's his highest finish of this season so far. He had a drive-through penalty. He seemed to just make his right decisions under the safety car, and he seemed to make a really good recovery after especially having a drive-through penalty. So my question for him would be, what was the driving force behind you not giving up and driving yourself back into those high points positions and eventually scoring P4?
Yeah, very interesting race dynamic, and obviously Speed Quinn and Alls doing very well for themselves, getting their best results of their respective seasons. But before we end off the stream, I'd like to mention one more of One Hub Racing's partners, and that is Vespertine. They make all of the merch here for One Hub Racing. You can get yourself jumpers, caps, bottles, t-shirts for One Hub Racing specifically, but also a bunch of other brands and maybe even leagues. So if you want to get yourself some One Hub Racing merch or anyone else's merch, you can go check out Vespertine. Their link will be in the link in the description below.
And I guess I will finish off the partners section by mentioning the team I am a part of, ERT. They sponsor the league with trophies, prizes. They help award the prizes. They also award their own special award called the ERT Going Gets Tough Award, which is an award to drivers who show that they don't give up. They turn up every week, get involved in answer every media question, get involved in every single aspect of the league, and show that even when the races are going bad, you don't give up. And I think a good example of that today would be Speed Quinn as well. Just throw a bit more praise his way. But yeah, so yeah, there will be socials links for ERT down in the description. Go check them out.
Definitely do, and I hope you did enjoy this eventful American Grand Prix here in the P3 tier. And be sure to check in with us next week for the final round of the season and the championship decider between Gazaman and Konghofner, Red Bull and Alfa Romeo. It's going to be very close between the two of them, a 3-point gap difference. That's the difference between the two of these drivers. So it's going to be an exciting final round. So I hope to see you all next week, 7 p.m. BST on a Friday. But right now, the P1 tier is in the middle of its qualifying session. So if you want to get in on some more One Hub racing action, go check them out. Their live stream will also be on the YouTube channel. So that's all from myself and Tom. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope